Hello and welcome to Lightning Component Development Session Day 11. This is Amit, and today we will learn the event propagation in Lightning Component. That means we will be learning the event propagation for component event and the same for the application event. So for the every event we have three phases, that is capture phase, bubble phase and default phase, and then we'll also see how the components are rendered, how the components are created whenever we are working with the nested components or we are working with the parent child components. So let's see. For the capture phase, that trickles down from the source component to the application root. That means the source component that is firing the event, first it will trigger all the phases that are all the event handler that are identified as a capture phase, and then it will go for the bubble phase. So that means let's say that this is the root component, so it will first tackle the root component. It will check either the handler on the root component has capture phase or not. If not, then it will check for the component that is inside that root component, and then it will check for the components that are there in the containment hierarchy. And so why we are using the event propagation? So for event propagation, every component cannot handle the event in the containment hierarchy. When we say that containment hierarchy, that means if this source component is and the source component's parent component is this, let's say that this one is A, B and then C, then the immediate parent of source component is C, and then the immediate parent component of B is C is B and B is A. So if I'm firing the event from the source component, then these two components will not be able to handle the event. Only root component will can handle the event. So to if you wanted to handle the event in these two components, we have to use the event propagation, the concept of event propagation. This is why we are here in this concept. And as you see that the capture phase trickles down from the source component to the application root. The just opposite is as bubble phase. If you see, bubble phase always bubbles up to the root component from the source component until all component has been traversed, or we have called event.stop propagation. That means we are stopping the event from that particular component. So what is the need of these two phases, like event and bubble? Capture and bubble. That means if you wanted to specify in which order, or if you wanted to specify which component can handle what phase of the event, which component, and we can also identify the order of the execution of the event that are being executed. If you wanted to execute let's say that if I wanted to execute root component to be executed on the last, I must use bubble phase, so that because bubble phase executed on the last, and then firstly executed capture phase and then bubble phase. So for the component event propagation, we have only two phases. One is capture phase and then other one is bubble phase. For the component event, we don't have default phase. So let's go ahead and see how event propagation work in the component in case of component events. So this is the developer org that we created. First we will go ahead and create a component that we will name it as source component. I will copy. So before we go ahead, we need to create another lightning event that will be component event. Here change the type as a component. So in the source component, what we will do, we will just create a button that will be responsible for firing the lightning component event. On the on click, just give the variant as brand, and then on click we will be executing, we will be firing the event. That will be c dot execute event. So as we know that in case of component event we need to put the register. So first we will register the event, we will name it as the same source component anything, and then we will put the type, that will be c colon comp event. So here what we'll do, we'll just go to the name, what was it, will be execute event. So here on the action will be same, where comp event component dot get event, and then we will just execute event, and that means we'll fire the event. So here we can also put one alert, and that will be source component. And so we are done with the source component and the event and the controller of the source component. So now next what we'll do, we will create a new component that will be the, we will name it as handle component 1. Sorry, we will name it as handle component. So just go ahead and create, and inside this we will just put the handler, name equal to whatever name we have provided here, and then event action c dot handle event, and for the event copy from here, put the same, and in the controller create a method that is handle, and then just put the alert, nothing, I mean handle component. So now let's just see what we have done. Here we will use that handle component, and inside handle component we will use source component, because component event only work with the parent child components. Oops, we are not able to get any data. Why? Close this. Source component, we have created lightning button, component event, source component controller, we don't need this. Only getting handlers, that means source component is not working. Okay, just go ahead. We are not able to get. Okay, what if I use this component inside handle component? Okay, why this not working here? Okay, just put this inside the division. And take the SLDS class. Sorry, this is not the one. This one. Now if you click on this, you can see that I'm in source component, I'm in handle component. That means application event is working fine. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create one more component that will name it as root component. And inside root component we'll just use the same thing. Here we will just put handle component, and inside the controllers we will use the same thing and we'll just say that root component. Okay, and in the application we will name it as, just remove this, we'll name it as root component. So you can see that handler, that is the handle component, and this handler is the root component. So for that, here you can set that root component, it will, you can see root component, and then inside root component we are using handler component, that is this one. You can name it as handler component, and then in the source component we can also put some text, that will be source component. So now let's see what happens here. Inside root component put br tag, handle component put br tag. Now refresh. Okay, it's working fine. Click on this. I am in source component, I am in handle component, and I am in root component. So you can see that we are able to get all three alerts here. And now what we need to do is okay, so now what we did, we added the handle component in the application, and then inside that handle component we added the source component. And in the handle component what we did, we just used v.body so that we can get the data from the child component here. You can see if we remove this body from the child component, we will not be able to get this fire application fire event. You can see we are not able the, now let's add that, remove this. You can see source, and then we are not able to get any alert from the from handle component. Okay, so why we are not able to get the alert? If in our handler we can add one thing, that is include facets equal to true, then you will see that we are able to get two alerts. How many handle component? So what it does, include facets, it tells the source component that you need to traverse all the components that are added here. So let's say that if you are adding the handle component as a child of root component and then refreshing the page, we are not able to get and the content the button. So first what we need to do in the root component, we need to add the tag v.body so that we can get the data here. Now we are getting, so source component, handle component, and then in the root component we are not getting. Why we are not getting? We need to add the same thing, that is include facets. So if you refresh this page, now we will be able to get 3 root component. So this is these are working as a default. We didn't set any phase for this. Let's say that in the handle component I wanted to set the phase as a bubble, and then saving, go back to the component, and if you refresh, click here source component, guess what should be the next output? It should be root component, not handle component. But here we are getting handle component and then root component. What if I define the phase as a capture for the root component, and let's see how the alerts are being changed, how we are getting the alerts. Source, root, and handle. So you can see that if we are identifying phase as capture for the root component, we are able to get the alert for the root component as first and then handle component at the last. Why? Because we specified the phase of for that particular event. If you wanted to capture here, let's say that here in the capture in the root, what I wanted that if the event is handled here, I don't want to the event to be handled by the other components. So you can just call a method called stop propagation that will stop the event from getting handled by other components. So let's go ahead, click on fire component, source, root, and you are not getting any alerts. The same thing, if you remove this, then we will be able to get 3 alerts. That means the event is handled by all 3 components. So this is how phases capture and bubble phase works while we are working with the containment hierarchy. That means the parent component for the source component is root component, and then the immediate parent that is called as container component is the handle component. So we can identify that parent component as a root component, and then container component that is the handle component, and here we have source component. Oops. Okay, now let's remove the phase for handle component and don't put any phase here, remove the include facets as well, and see what is the, if is there any difference or not. Source, you can see root, and we are not able to get any. Let's say that name it as capture. Now refresh the page, fire component root, and we are not getting. Why? The reason is only include facet. So even in the containment hierarchy, if we are using the components in a different level of hierarchy and we wanted the component to handle the event, we have to include the one attribute on the handler, that is include faces as true, and then the phase in which you wanted to capture, the event, either capture or bubble phase. So now if you refresh, you will get the same, the three alerts, root and handle component. So this is how the event propagation work for the component event. And in case of application event, this is how it works. This is for the app component event. You can see event fired, capture phase, and then bubble phase. Yeah, we already saw the example how these two phases works with the component event. And then in case of application event, we have one extra phase that is called as default phase. So how it works, we fire the event, we capture the event, we capture the event for the bubble phase, and then we capture the event for the default phase. And the same stop event.stop propagation method works for both component and application event. So if you see, if you go ahead to the application events, let me remove these components and go ahead and create a new event. We will see that, name it as application event, and this is type of application by default. We don't need to change anything. Lightning component, application event, you can say that application event source. Again, we don't need to handle the event, we just need to create a button. That will be label as event, and then on click we'll just execute event. Here for the event, as we know that there is a different way to get the application events, that is $a dot get, and then inside that E for event, C for namespace, and then the name of the application event. Okay, what is the name? Name is application event, and then we will be firing this application event. For method name, just change the name as execute event. So this is the source component, this is the event that we don't need. Now let's create a new component that will be application event handle. In the handle, what we'll do, we just use the same concept. As of now, we don't need to put anything, we don't need to give any name. For the event, we need to use the same event that we use here, and then action will be same, so that we can use the same method. Application event handle component. Why we are not able to get anything? Okay, click on controller, replace the controller here with the handle, and then I'm in application handle. Okay, so just for now remove this application source, and the application, what we'll do, we will add both component, that will be application event handle and then application event source. As we saw that application event work within the application. Oops. Okay, let's preview it. You can see fire application event, application handle. You can see we are able to fire the application event. So for application event source, we forgot to put one thing, that is variant equal to brand. We didn't put any alert. Let's put one alert, that application shows component. Okay, so let's go ahead here. Click on application forward. We are able to application source handle. Okay, so what if, let's go ahead in the event in the application and change the hierarchy. That means put the component inside the application handle component, and see if you are able to get the button for firing the application event or not. Okay, so we are not getting. Why? The only reason is that we need to put body here, v.body, so that we can get body from the child component. So here we are able to get the button now. Click on fire application source and then application handle. Now let's go ahead, create a new component that we will name it as application event root. Save it, and here in the application we are also going to use this component. So for handling, we are definitely going to use the same method. We'll just application root, that's it. And for the this is okay. Let's go ahead, remove this. Now click on the button application source component. You can see that application handle, and then we are not able to get the event. Okay, we didn't save the application, sorry. click on the application source component, application root, and then application handle. So how this, okay, we are not closing this application root here. We are making the same hierarchy that we put for the component event. We are doing the same for the application event here, so that we can test and see the difference between application and component. Source component, application handle, and then application root. So how it is working, that it is just working as a default, because we have a default phase. You can see that we are able to traverse from we are getting application event, then application root, and let me check it. Yeah, so as we have default phase for the application event, this is working. Let me show you, put some, okay, here in the application root we are going to add application facets, include facet equal to true, and then phase equal to capture. Now let's go, oops, refresh the page, and now click source component. You can see application root is coming first, and then application handle. Why this? Because of phase, because of we are capturing the phase. This is why we are able to get the event in the root component. As you can see that root is on the top, it should be in the last, but we are getting first with the help of capture event. And now if in the source as well, we are adding the both things, include facet and face capture, sorry, in the handle. Now if you'll see, I'll refresh this, you will see source, application root, and then handle component. Why this is, yeah, you can see why this is happening, because of the capture phase. Because what does capture phase do? It travels from top to bottom, from the application root to the source component. If we do it for the, let's say that for the handle, just bubble it, and then for the application root leave it as a capture event, and then we'll see source, application, and then a bubble. Now what we'll do, we will leave it as capture, and then we will leave it bubble. You can see application handle is coming first, and then application root is coming last. So you can see that whenever we are changing the phase, capture to bubble, anything, we are able to traverse, we are able to get the different alerts with a different order. So the same thing, if you wanted to stop the event at any time, you can just call event.stop propagation. So next thing is that component creation. So for the component creation, how does it work? You can see that this is a root component, and inside that root component we have a child component, that is parent component, and then we also have another child component, that is child2, and then inside parent component we have child1. Inside the child component we have two other components, subchild2 and subchild1. So how does component will create? Whenever we are clicking on the root component, first it will initialize the root component, then it will go to the parent, and then the child of that parent, and then child of that child, and then it will go to the child component too. So this is the way, this is the sequencing how the component are being created whenever we are working with the parent to child relationship with the components. That means First it will initialize itself, and then it will initialize its child, one of its child. If the child contains subchild, then it will go there and it will keep the hierarchy doing, and then in the last it will go to the other components, and if we do have another, then it will go for the third one as. So this is the hierarchy of the component creation, how component actually initialize while we are clicking on a parent component. And then here this is the rendering nested component. That means if I have an application, my app, and then inside that application I have a component, and then inside that component I have a button. So how it will initialize now? Firstly it will initialize button, then it will go to the component, and then it will go to the application. That means if I'm getting any error here in the UI button, I will not be able to get any output on the component. That means I'm not able to get in the application as well. So this is how the rendering works, and this is how the component creation works. So for the lab work, we're not going to do that much today, but for the next tutorials what we are going to do, let me show you. For the beer, create beer order. So here in the create beer order we are using lightning colon record form. So but we also wanted to use the default value for beer, for which beer record we are creating the order. So what we are going to do, we are not going to use lightning colon record form, because there are some issues, there are some limitations. We cannot default the value for any field. So what we are going to do now, we are going to add the fields one by one. That means we are going to add the fields manually, so that we can get the ID from the URL, and then we can default this beer record, which whatever ID we have here in the URL. And we also wanted to remove this order amount. We are not going to show this order amount on the layout, and then we are also not going to use this order by in the layout. And then we are going to use all the other fields. And then also once the order is created, we don't want it to go user to the here on the detail page. So what we will do, once the order is created we will just show the confirmation message, and then we'll get back to the beer explorer record. If the user wants us to order other beer, then user can do. So for today, this was the whole scenario that we work on the event propagation, and I hope that you learned something new here in this video. That is how we can use the event propagation, how we can deal with the different phases of the events, and how the component creation and rendering works. Thank you guys for watching the video. Thank you. We'll see you on the next video.